Her son received his stimulus check, an actual paper check, which she was trying to help him find where to cash without being charged a fee.
I just feel like I'm being cheated, robbed.
PLS check cashing takes 1% plus $1, meaning only $13 in fees on a $1,200 stimulus check. Other check cashing services said they would charge the government.
We finally have some breaking news, everybody. Important information has been released by the IRS, and lawmakers are actually working on making some big changes that will affect inflation and the current cost of living adjustment, meaning that many of you guys could expect to receive a stimulus check in a couple of days. So here are some new details on what the federal government is doing right now. Right now, Americans are hoping for wage gains to offset the hottest inflation in 40 years, but there are a number of factors that can impact your take-home pay in 2023. And because inflation is rising so sharp, the IRS and other agencies are changing many rules to account for the increase in prices. For instance, the tax agency said this week that it's boosting its 2023 tax brackets by 7% because of inflation. This is a move designed to avoid bracket creep, which is when people get pushed into higher tax rates because of cost of living salary adjustments, although their standard of living hasn't even changed. And the IRS is also increasing the standard deduction by the same percentage, which will benefit most taxpayers who use this tax break. Inflation adjustments to tax brackets mean it will be harder for taxpayers to hit those higher brackets, and therefore we'll have more income taxed at lower rates next year. So what does this mean for you? Well, the interplay is that these changes is complex, but the upshot is that many low and middle income taxpayers may be able to trim their taxes as a result. The outlook is more complicated for higher income workers because of an inflation adjusted boost in the cap for Social Security taxes. According to a recent survey for 2023, employers plan to roughly offer their workers an annual raise of 4%. That's roughly in line with the median pay bump that employees got in 2022. The problem is that inflation this year has been running at about twice the rate, with prices rising 8% in September from a year ago. Economists at the Federal Reserve also expect inflation to subside later this year and into next year as well, although the central bank has been criticized for its last call that the sharp rise in prices was transitory. Now, if the Fed is correction in predicting that inflation will decline next year, it will restore some purchasing power for consumers next year. So far, though, inflation has remained very high. We all know that. And the IRS is boosting its taxable income thresholds for its 7 tax brackets, which range from 37 to even 10%. The higher limits could result in tax savings for some people, that is. And the IRS also announced this. It's boosting the 2023 contribution limits to the 401k plan by a record $2,000 due to inflation. It will allow workers to save more money in 2023. Individuals will be able to save up to $22,000 in their 401k next year, an increase of almost 10% from the current year's limit of $20,000. The new cap also applies to other types of defined contribution plans. The IRS said the contribution limit for IRAs will increase to $6,500 next year, a boost of 8.3% from the 2022 limit of $6,000. However, the catch-up contribution for people over the age of 50 will remain at $1,000 because that rule is not subject to any annual adjustment for inflation. The Social Security Administration taxes wages to fund the program, but it caps the amount of individual earnings that can be taxed within a calendar year. That cap changes every year to align with the National Average Wage Index. Because of inflation, the taxable minimum will rise to $160,000, an increase of almost 9% from the current cap of $147,000. That means higher earners will pay a Social Security tax of 6.2% on that additional $13,000 of income next year. Workers with access to flexible spending accounts and health saving accounts can also set aside more pre-tax dollars next year due to inflation adjustments. And in 2023, employees can put away as much as $3,000 in FSA, an increase about 7% from the current tax year's cap of $2,800. And according to CBS News, everybody, this could give you more tax savings. So hopefully President Biden can do something about this and send out stimulus checks in the coming days, because President Biden definitely has to do something for the American people.
Faced down Big Pharma and said, "You will no longer price gouge our seniors. No more." He has done so much more, like safeguard seniors in nursing homes and support the workers who care for them. But I want to focus today on the stronger financial security that netted from this president that he put beneath every senior in Florida. Democrats delivered several laws to make life safer and more secure, but the one history will note is the Inflation Reduction Act. It tackles climate change, the deficit, and makes the rich pay their fair share. But what it truly gives our seniors is real peace of mind. For the first time since the Affordable Care Act, this new law will bring down and keep down prescription drug costs and insurance premiums.
Now guys, Democrats and Republicans are now debating on whether a fourth stimulus check is even necessary. Top GOP lawmakers have proposed a fourth round of relief payments. However, this would only be a one-time check, instead of recurring monthly deposits. Democrats are trying to move forward with the budget reconciliation without Manchin's support. So, John Manchin recently pumped the brakes on negotiations with Chuck Schumer over a budget reconciliation bill, warning that it needs to be scrubbed much better after new reports showed that inflation hit 9.1% in June. Manchin told reporters he can only agree to the prescription reform, which has already been sent to the Senate Parliamentarian's office and has the support of all 50 members of the Democratic caucus. He said the deficit reduction is going to be 50% of the new revenue gained from prescription savings and tax reforms, such as a 8.3% tax on wealthy individuals and couples who earn more than $400,000 or $500,000 from past due businesses. He said the latest inflation report showing prices have increased by 9.1% compared to over a year ago means that people are going to have to slow down and proceed more cautiously on putting together the budget. But Manchin did not rule out including a provision to continue subsidies of health insurance plans provided under the Healthcare Affordable Care Act, explained that whether he could agree to extend subsidies would depend on how they are drafted and paid for. Manchin said it depends on if we can look at things and find a pathway forward that is not inflammatory. The West Virginia senator also emphasized that he's more inclined to keep the spending in the bill as modest as possible to avoid further stimulating an overheated economy. Manchin also said there's been no talk of lifting the cap on the state and local tax deduction, something that two Democrats from the Northeast, Josh Gottheimer and Thomas Suzy, are demanding. Even though Manchin has expressed his opposition to the bill, Democrats are still pushing for the bill to be passed. Another 4 U.S. states can be added to the list of those who are providing their residents with much needed financial boost as inflation hikes prices for the majority of products. As for Chicago, those who qualify for universal basic income payments received their first check earlier this week, as Mayor Lightfoot announced that the checks were sent out to more than 3,500 households.
Feeling the effects of rising costs. As these costs continue to put pressure on the pockets of America's working families, House Democrats are working tirelessly to provide relief. When gas prices soared earlier this year, House Democrats took action to fight price gouging at the pump. House Democrats took action to lower insulin costs and ensure that life-saving prescriptions do not send families into bankruptcy. As food prices